What is up, guys? Randomonium here. I wanted to do a quick video on some of the pregame stuff that I do that goes into the pick ban phase for our amateur league that we're doing. I take the pregame very seriously. I do a lot of scouting and research for all of my matches, and I think it actually really helps us. And I want to focus on a game that we played in our week 3 matchup. So the team that we went up against, we scouted them out. I felt like we had a really good game plan going in, and it actually resulted in a 15-minute surrender for our game 1. And the team was so kind of demoralized or tilted or whatever that they decided to forfeit the game 2. So it was basically we won both games in 15 minutes. So I figured that this would be a good opportunity to share with you guys my strategy for going into the pregame, doing my scouting, and coming up with a pick ban strategy that gives us a good advantage going into at least the first game, but can also be adapted for the second game as well. And one of the reasons why I want to do this is I'm pretty sure that some of the people that we played against watch my videos, and I hope that they watch this video because I want them to see how things went off the rails so that they can learn from this in the future, because that's really the important thing with these type of amateur leagues. It's, winning is great, like it's a lot of fun to win, but the more important thing is that you learn from it and that you improve over time. And I think that this will hopefully help them improve and will hopefully help other people improve and how they approach the scouting portion of a match and how they establish a pregame plan for their pick ban strategy. So I'll show you guys a little bit of what we do on a weekly basis. So what we do is the first step is that you need to figure out what champions each person on the enemy team plays. And this is the easiest way to do this is to look at somebody's op.gg. Or you can use a similar site, but I typically use op.gg. So you definitely want to look at what champions they play in ranked. So you can definitely look at their most played champions in ranked for this season, and it's also useful to look at previous seasons as well. But the current season is usually the most indicative of what they're going to play. And then you also want to look at their recent match history, even in normal games, especially the normal games that they played with their team. So a lot of teams will practice stuff in normal games, and then if it works out well, they will transition that into the amateur league. So ranked games are great. You definitely want to look at those ranked games, but don't forget to look at also the normal games, especially the normal games where they played with the rest of their team, because some people have certain picks that they won't want to play in solo queue, but that work very well when they're in a team environment. So you can see that we did this for every single champion, and you usually want to do at least the top 5 for each role. And if it's a role that you are particularly worried about, or a role that you think is particularly important, or if the person has a really wide champion pool, you may want to do the top 6, top 7, top 8, top 10, whatever it takes in order for you to feel confident. And what you do from there is, once you figure out what their most likely played champions are, is that you start filling out what you think are good counter matchups into all of those situations. So what you can do is you can go to sites like u.gg, you can go to lolalytics.com, any site that shows win rates for champions when they go up against a certain matchup. And this will give you kind of information. You're looking for champions that typically have, like a 55+% win rate against a certain other champion, and you just start slotting them in. And you just slot them in for every single champion that they play. And that gives you kind of an idea of, hey, if they pick this champion, then I'll probably want to pick this champion. And it's not saying that you have to lock that in, but it's just so you just have a game plan, because I've had multiple times where people will panic pick stuff and it turns out going really poorly. So you just want to have something set up like, hey, these are the, if you're in the moment and you're panicking and you don't know what to pick, these are the type of picks that you can default to. And a lot of times what you'll see is you can actually see kind of patterns emerging. So you can see, like, for example, we got a NAR here, we've got a NAR here, we've got a NAR there, we've got a NAR there. So you can see that NAR shows up in multiple times. So then you can say, okay, so also from this, I can gain what would be good blind picks based off of what his champion pools. If I have a single pick that counters, 4 out of the 5 champions that he's most likely to play, that's a safe blind pick into that matchup. So not only do you get an idea of, hey, what are my counter matchups if that person picks their champion first, but you also get a good sense of what are my safe blind picks against this player for this particular matchup. So from there, once you get an idea of what your counter picks are and what your safe blind picks are, then you can start thinking about, okay, what are the problem champions that this team plays? What are the champions that we really want to devote some bans to that we definitely are worried about? So on this side, what I'm showing is I'm showing all of their most played champions, and I chose 5 from each, and then I've color coordinated the bans with red champions being high priority bans, and then purple being low priority bans. And this is based off of frequency that they've played the champion, and also how well that champion counters what we want to necessarily do with our team composition. For example, Vladimir is definitely a ban that we wanted to have in our match because they can flex with Vladimir both top or mid, which is really good for them. So we're just like, we don't want to really worry about this. Vladimir's pretty strong. He scales really well. He's a flex pick for them. Let's just get him off the table so we don't have to worry about him. And that kind of takes away one of those variables that we don't really want to worry about. And then, so what we also looked at is we said, okay, based off of their previous match experience, based off of what they're going on, what's the lane that we really want to focus? And we decided on top lane, because the top laner, he does a really good job when he's ahead. He can just like hard carry games when he's ahead, but he has difficulty when he's behind. He has difficulty tempering his aggression when he's behind. So we say, okay, we want to target this top lane. We definitely want to devote a lot of our bans towards top lane, and we want to get our top laner in a really good matchup. So let's make sure that we spend a lot of time talking about what are the good counter matchups for top lane, what are the people we want to ban out. So we said, okay, right off the table, we're going to ban out some of his 2 most played champions, the Yorick and the Kled. So, and then we're also banning out the Vladimir, so that's technically also a 3rd pick that he can't play. So we're basically doing 3 bans towards top lane, but the Vladimir ban is also targeted towards mid lane as well, with the mid laner's most played champion. So then we're saying, okay, well, let's look at previous matches. What do they typically pick? Well, they usually save their top lane pick for the second pick phase. So we're like, all right, so that gives us 2 potential more bans that we can devote towards top lane. So we've got the bans that we can devote for the first ban phase, and then we've also got the bans for second ban phase. So then there's 3 main champions left that he plays. There's the Jax, the Olaf, the Darius, and he also plays the Gangplank a bit. So we're like, okay, out of those picks, what are the ones that you don't want to play against? And our top laner said, hey, yeah, I'd rather not play against the Olaf or the Darius. I feel okay playing into the Jax. We're like, okay, that makes sense. Well, let's look at the counter matchups for Jax. Well, Gnar is one of the picks that our top laner felt really comfortable, and Gnar's got a good win rate into Jax. And then it just so happens that Gnar also has a good win rate into Gangplank. So we're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense then. So we'll leave up the Jax, we'll ban away the Olaf and the Darius, and that way if he picks the Jax or he picks the Gangplank, we can pick the Gnar as the counter pick to either one of those picks. So that kind of neutralizes that threat in top lane. For jungle, we weren't too worried about the jungle matchups. I felt like I matched up pretty well with their jungler. For mid lane, we're like, okay, we're looking at mid lane, and oh, look at this. All of these champions, vel'koz is pretty good into. So vel'koz is kind of like, all right, if we're not sure what we want to pick mid lane, we probably want to go vel'koz. The other thing we were looking at was they like to play a lot of Ashe Nami. So we're like, okay, Ashe Nami, what do we want to counter Ashe Nami? Most likely Silver Morgana, because Silver Morgana can pretty negate the bubble from the Nami, the ultimate from the Ashe. It's just a really good matchup into them. And the Sivir can basically perma push, and if the Ashe tries to use her volley, then Sivir gains back her mana with her spell shield. So we're like, okay, so we've got a good plan for top lane. We've got a good plan for jungle. We've got a good plan for mid lane. We've got a good plan for bot lane and support. So what wound up happening is I'll show you that. So this is the way that the pick ban phase went down. So you can see that right off the bat, we ban out the Yorick, we ban out the Kled, we ban out the Vladimir. So we take those 3 power picks off the table. They wind up banning out Sejuani, a Mumu for 2 junglers, and then the Echo. The Echo I agree with. That was a good ban because our mid laner plays a lot of Echo. I think that they made a mistake here. They didn't need to devote 2 bans to me because my champion pool is so deep that doesn't really matter. You could have done the 3 bans or 4 bans or 5 bans towards the jungle. I still have plenty of champions that I can play. So I think that they probably wanted to choose the Sejuani or the Amumu, not both. That way they could have freed up a different ban. Maybe they could have banned out the vel'koz or something like that. I mean, there's plenty of other bans that were strong against us that they could have gone for. By them devoting 2 bans to the jungle, I think that was definitely a mistake on their part. This is a common mistake that a lot of people make, is if they see a skill disparity in one lane, they'll try to neutralize it with bans. But typically, if there's a high enough skill disparity, it doesn't matter how many bans you devote to that role. There's still going to be the skill disparity, and the person's 6th best champion can probably still beat your team's 1st best champion. And we saw that I ran into a similar issue in a previous week where I'm going up against a diamond jungler. I'm like, well, I'm not going to devote bans to that guy because he could probably play his 10th best champion and do decently well into me. So we only devoted 1 ban towards their jungler, which was his best champion, and it worked out pretty well for us. So that's definitely the advice I would give to you guys, is if you have a huge skill disparity in a lane, you don't want to devote too many bans to that area. Instead, you want to try and devote your bans to areas where the lanes are more neutral, where you can swing that lane into a positive state from a neutral state. If there's a huge skill disparity in one area, there's no way you're going to be able to cover that gap. There's always going to be that skill disparity. So you definitely want to take one that's more neutral and sway it in your favor, rather than trying to cover up the gap in a lane where you have a lot of difficulty, or just a role in general where you have a lot of difficulty. So they wind up devoting 2 bans to the jungle, which I think is a mistake, and they wind up first picking this Xerath. And the big thing that I have to ask is why. Like, I think this is another mistake. It's why would you show your mid lane pick first? I know that Xerath can be flexed to support, but they wind up second picking the Nami. So right off the bat, we know that it's Nami support and it's Xerath mid. I think they definitely wanted to hold on to this Xerath pick. They could have very easily first picked the Nunu. It doesn't show their hand that much. Or if they really thought that the Ashe or the Nami were a priority pick, they could have first picked that. Save your mid lane pick, because what this allows us to do is, on red side, you're guaranteed 1 counter pick because you've got last pick. But if you first pick or you early pick the mid laner, then now I get to counter pick both of your solo lanes. So that definitely is a mistake that you can make on blue side. A lot of times you want to save your mid lane pick and your top lane pick for your last 2 picks, unless you feel like there's a really huge priority pick for mid lane or top lane that's your first pick. You see this in like the LCS and a lot of pro play, a lot like that. The first pick Silas, the first pick Akali, something that's like that is really hotly contested and can be flexed to both top lane and mid lane. They will first pick, but the Xerath, you're showing your hand way too much with that first pick. So you can see that they wind up first picking the Xerath. We first pick the Sivir, or our first 2 picks are the Sivir and the Morgana. So we knew that we wanted to go Sivir Morgana into Ashe Nami, and we predicted that they were going to go Ashe Nami. So we're like, okay, first 2 picks, we're going to go Sivir Morgana. If they decide to flex that Xerath down to support, Morgana and Sivir are still good into the Xerath support, so we're good there. So Sivir Morgana, anticipating the Ashe Nami. They do wind up picking the Ashe. So now we're like, all right, sweet. We got the bot lane matchup that we want, that we were expecting to get. How do we want to round up the draft? Well, we were talking about, hey, they've already shown their mid laner. Do we want to pick the mid laner now? Or do we want to risk getting some bans in the second ban phase? And our mid laner was like, nah, it's fine. Pick the jungler now. They've already taken off the Sejuani and the Amumu. They might try to take more tank junglers with their second ban phase, so just pick the Nautilus. I'm like, okay, I can pick the Nautilus. Maybe they'll think it's going to be a flex top lane or a flex mid, but they did know that I played Nautilus jungle, so I don't think we really fooled them with the Nautilus pick, but that's fine. So then we go through the second round of ban phases, and we said, okay, hey, we want to try and force him onto that Jax pick or the Gangplank pick. So what are we going to do? We're going to ban the Olaf. We're going to ban the Darius. And really, this there was no other reason for us to ban anything else because they've already picked their mid laner. We're not worried about the jungle matchup. So by picking that mid laner first, we're like, okay, well, we had nothing to worry about. Like, all they got left is their jungler and their top laner. So we're going to devote those 2 more bans to the top lane because I'm not really worried about anything in the jungle. He's most likely going to pick the Nunu since he's already banned out his own Sejuani. So, yeah, we wind up banning out the Olaf and the Darius. Then we picked the vel'koz. We saved the top lane pick for last, which is our counter pick. They wind up picking the Nunu, which was to be expected since the Sejuani was banned and the Mumu was banned. And then their last pick they pick up was the Jax, exactly what we expected. So we pick up the Gnar, we get the counter pick, and it winds up being a great day for us. So that kind of breaks down like what we wind up doing. You guys can see like how this all works out, and you can see the importance of scouting ahead of time because we basically read exactly what they wanted to do. We knew that they wanted to go Ashe Nami. We knew that they were going to play some type of tank jungler. And when they banned out the Sejuani and the Moon, we're like, okay, that's most likely going to be a Nunu in the jungle then. And then we kind of tried to funnel their top laner onto either the Jax pick or the Gangplank pick, and we had the Gnar waiting as the counter pick if they picked either the Jax or the Gangplank. The only pick that kind of threw us off was the Xerath, but because they first picked that Xerath, we were able to adapt in enough time in order to basically come up with a good matchup, which we thought the vel'koz into the Xerath, even though it's like more of a skill matchup, we felt like it was a pretty good matchup for us in the mid lane. And it winds up that we wound up having a 9,000, almost 10,000 gold lead by the 15-minute mark. We absolutely destroyed every single lane. And this was against a team that was pretty much even skill level to us. But because we did our homework, because we really thought about what our pick ban phase strategy was going to be, because we knew exactly what champions they like to play, and we came up with counter picks for every single champion that they were going to go through, we basically just won the game from the pick ban phase. I think that they kind of went into the game and they're like, whoa, what the heck happened to us? So I kind of definitely wanted to make this video to kind of show off the power of doing that pre-game analysis, the power of scouting, the power of the pick ban phase, and show you how powerful it can be when you actually get into an actual game. So we had a equal team, we destroyed them in 15 minutes, and they were so demoralized that they didn't want to play a game 2. So yeah, that's the power of pick ban phase. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is Randomodium signing off.